You think you're smarter than everyone else. You tell yourself it's just a game, a small trick, nothing serious. That's how I felt that night. $20 in my pocket and a plan that seemed too easy to fail. I remember the way I counted the bills, feeling the weight of them like power in my hands. I convinced myself she would bend to my little scheme, that she'd laugh politely, maybe shrink back, and I'd feel that rush, the rush of superiority, of control. I watched her across the room, every gesture cataloged in my mind as proof of my brilliance. She smiled, lightly, almost politely, and I laughed to myself. That laugh became a fuel, a fire in my chest that told me I was untouchable. I dragged my friend into it, needing a witness, someone to see me in my cleverness, to see her respond the way I expected. I didn't see the small, almost imperceptible signs that she was not afraid. I didn't notice the tilt of her chin, the calm steadiness in her eyes. I was blind to her composure because my arrogance was louder than observation. I remember feeling that electric thrill, a sense of dominance I hadn't felt in years. It was a high that made the world shrink to a spotlight on my plan. Every detail seemed to confirm I was right. Booking the hotel room felt like placing the final piece on a board I had already won. I imagined her reaction, the shock, the discomfort, the humiliation I was sure I'd create. Every laugh I imagined echoed in my head like applause for my cleverness. I was on top of the world, or so I thought. But beneath that confidence, there were whispers I chose to ignore. Little signs that didn't fit the story I wanted to tell myself. A glance that lingered a second too long, a subtle straightening of posture, a pause before she responded. I dismissed them as inconsequential, because admitting them would crack the illusion I had built so carefully. I told myself she was naive, that she couldn't see past my plan. And in doing that, I forgot the simplest truth. Arrogance blinds you to reality, and underestimation is the easiest trap to fall into. As I laid out the last details of my scheme, the excitement surged, but it wasn't pure. There was a faint echo of tension I couldn't place, a faint hum of uncertainty beneath the thrill. And still I ignored it. I couldn't imagine that my cleverness, the $20, the hotel room, all of it, would become irrelevant the moment she revealed the force I never accounted for. I thought I controlled the narrative, that I had all the pieces. But the story, the real story, was never mine to dictate. And that ignorance, that blind arrogance, was the stage being set for the shock that would shake me in ways I couldn't yet imagine. I was ready to play the game, unaware that the game had been playing me all along. You walk into a place already convinced you've won. That's the kind of arrogance that feels warm in your chest, like a private victory no one else can see yet. When we stepped into that hotel lobby, I was smiling in a way I didn't even try to hide. I could already picture how the night would unfold. I had rehearsed it in my head so many times that it felt real. Her discomfort, my laughter, my friend watching it all, silently impressed by how smoothly I pulled it off. She walked beside me quietly, too quietly. At first glance, she looked exactly how I expected, compliant, almost soft. There was no resistance in her posture, no visible tension in her voice. She followed my lead. Let me speak to the receptionist. Let me control the pace of everything. It fed me ego. I mistook her calmness for submission. I mistook her silence for weakness. But if I'm honest, there was something else in her eyes. A spark. Not fear. Not hesitation. Something steady. Something aware. I saw it, and I chose to ignore it. Once inside the room, I began. Small moves. Subtle jabs disguised as jokes. Little comments meant to chip away at her confidence. I controlled the environment, controlled the conversation, controlled the tone. I made sure my friend was paying attention, that he could witness every clever turn of humiliation I was orchestrating. I want an audience. I wanted validation. You know that feeling when you think you're dominating a moment? When every word you say feels sharp and precise. That was me. I leaned into petty insults with a smirk. I exaggerated her reactions. I nudged conversations in directions that cornered her. I thought I was guiding her into embarrassment. But something strange started happening. She didn't flinch. She didn't defend herself the way I expected. She didn't shrink. Instead, she responded with calm, almost surgical precision. When I tried to mock her, she laughed lightly and turned the joke in a way that made me look overeager. When I tried to highlight her discomfort, she redirected the focus, asking questions that subtly shifted attention back to me. Not aggressively, not emotionally, just smoothly. It was unsettling. The more I pushed, the more composed she became. There was no visible crack in her confidence. No panic, no confusion, just this quiet control that I hadn't planned for. My friend noticed it before I did. I caught him glancing at her, then at me. There was hesitation in his expression, a silent warning. He even tried to slow me down once, interrupting one of my sharper comments with a casual change of topic. But I brushed it off. I thought he just didn't understand the brilliance of what I was doing. That's what ego does to you. It convinces you that anyone who questions you simply lacks your vision. But beneath my smirk, something was shifting. A faint discomfort began creeping in. My jokes weren't landing the way I imagined. The humiliation I had scripted in my mind wasn't unfolding. Instead of watching her crumble, I found myself explaining things too much. Talking more, trying harder. And that's when you know control is slipping, when you start forcing what was supposed to happen naturally. She stayed calm, too calm. There was a moment when she looked directly at me, not smiling this time, not playing along, just looking. And in that look, I felt exposed. Like she understood every move before I made it. Like she wasn't trapped in my game at all. I doubled down, increased the pressure, sharpened the tone. I told myself I just needed one strong moment to tip the balance back in my favor. One final push. But the room felt different now. The air wasn't heavy with her discomfort. It was heavy with tension I couldn't name. My friend had gone quiet. The easy laughter I expected wasn't there. Instead, there was this strange silence between exchanges, like the pause before something breaks. For the first time, I questioned the simplicity of my plan. It was supposed to be clean, easy, a quick execution of humiliation followed by the satisfaction of being right. Instead, it felt like I was walking deeper into something I didn't fully understand. You don't notice the trap when you think you're the one setting it. You don't feel the walls closing in when you're too busy admiring your own cleverness. But the cracks were there, in the way she never lost her composure, in the way my friend stopped laughing, in the way my confidence started sounding louder than necessary. I told myself I still had control. I told myself this was just a minor detour. But deep down, there was a quiet realization forming, a realization I wasn't ready to face. The game wasn't unfolding the way I imagined. And for the first time that night, I felt something I hadn't planned for. Uncertainty. You think you've planned every move. You think you've got it all figured out. But there's a moment, just one, that makes you realize you never really understood the game. That night, I found that moment. It started slowly, almost imperceptibly. A glance here, a hesitation there. The jokes I had so carefully timed, the jabs I thought would cut deep, they bounced back, landing on me instead. At first, I laughed it off nervously. I tried to convince myself it was just a fluke, that my plan still held. But then it became obvious she was not reacting. She was leading. She was turning the game around quietly, meticulously, and I was too blind, too drunk on my own arrogance to notice. It was subtle at first. A shift in tone, a clever redirection. Something so small I almost dismissed it, but it started to compound. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to make a scene. She just executed her moves quietly, confidently, like a storm building behind calm eyes. I felt it, slowly, creeping into my chest, the first pangs of panic. I could feel the threads of my control fraying. The hotel room, which I had imagined as my stage, became a cage. And then the first public moment came. A slip I didn't expect. A laugh from passerby. My petty jabs now reflected back, making me look absurd. I could see my friend shifting in his seat, eyes darting between her and me, a subtle alarm etched across his face. My heart started racing. My mouth wanted to keep talking, to justify, to explain, but nothing I said fixed it. Nothing could. Every tiny trick I had planned, the jokes, the subtle humiliations, the little manipulations, all crumbled instantly. My pride, the sense of superiority I had nurtured with that cheap $20 scheme shattered like glass. I realized, with a sinking heaviness, that I had misjudged her completely. I had underestimated the calm in her eyes, the intelligence behind her quiet compliance. And now I was the one exposed. I could feel it in the room. Not just her presence, but the reaction of those around us. Witnesses, innocent bystanders, allies she had subtly drawn into the moment, all amplifying my humiliation without her needing to say a word. My own mind raced. Every action I took only deepened the trap I was in. The more I tried to regain control, the more tangled I became. I was flailing, but she remained poised. Her calmness was infuriating. It was a mirror showing me everything I had overlooked, everything I had ignored. I tried to analyze it, to find a flaw in her plan, but there was none. Every move I expected to terrify her only revealed my weakness. Every joke I intended to dominate her fell flat. The hotel room, which had once felt like my arena, was now a courtroom where I was on trial. And the jury, my friend, the witnesses, even my own racing thoughts, were silent, waiting to see me collapse. And collapse I did. Inside, I was panicked, trapped by my own miscalculations. My $20 confidence, my arrogance, my smug satisfaction, they were gone. In their place was a heavy, burning dread. I felt the shame of my misjudgment, the sting of realizing I had treated someone like a pawn when she was playing the game 10 steps ahead of me. The shock wasn't just external. It wasn't just the looks I could feel on me, the small smirks, the subtle glances. It was internal. My mind replayed every assumption I had made, every glance I had ignored, every spark of intelligence I had dismissed as weakness. I had created this illusion of control, only to watch it unravel in real time. Every heartbeat echoed the truth. I was humiliated because I had been blind. And the strangest part, the part that hit hardest, was that she didn't gloat. She didn't mock. She didn't raise her voice. She just remained steady, watching, calculating. The tables had turned, and I was alone with the realization of my own arrogance. I had underestimated not just her, but my own tendency to believe in my cleverness too fully. I could feel it spreading through me, the collapse of my ego, piece by piece. The dread became heavier. I noticed every misstep I had made, the way I had forced attention on her, the way I had dragged my friend into my foolish plan, the way I had imagined humiliation as a spectacle rather than respecting the intelligence across from me. By the time it fully sank in, the shock was complete. My confidence, once so loud, was drowned by the realization that I was exposed. My plan, my tricks, my sense of cleverness, all were irrelevant now. I was witnessing firsthand the power of composure and intelligence, and it was crushing me. There was guilt, too. Guilt for thinking her vulnerable, for underestimating her, for letting arrogance dictate my actions. Confusion followed, twisting through me. How could someone so calm, so clever, turn the night inside out without a single dramatic move? How had I failed to see it coming? How had I been so blind? And then, in that quiet terror of being undone, I understood. The shock wasn't just public humiliation. It was the humbling of my own ego. It was the mirror reflecting every flaw in my assumptions, every lapse in perception. It was a lesson carved into my chest with invisible hands. She stayed calm. I floundered. I panicked. I realized, painfully, that my game had never been mine to control. And in that moment, as the weight of exposure pressed down, the truth settled deep. The tables had turned, and I had no choice but to watch. I was no longer the orchestrator. I was the lesson. I sat alone afterward, the silence pressing against me like the weight of everything I had ignored. The hotel room felt smaller now, tighter, almost suffocating, not with her presence, but with the echo of what I had done to myself. My chest ached from the sting of humiliation, from the sharp realization that I had been blind. Every thought I had dismissed, every assumption I had made, every tiny spark in her eyes I had ignored. They all came back now, vivid and accusing. My friend spoke, his voice cutting through the quiet. At first, I tried to shrug it off, tried to dismiss his words as jealousy or misunderstanding. But there was truth in them, and I couldn't escape it. He listed the moments I had misjudged her, the arrogance that had led me to orchestrate this cheap little game, the foolish pride that made me think a $20 trick could measure intelligence or character. Each word sank deeper, embedding itself in my chest. I felt exposed all over again. Only this time there was no one else to blame. The shame was mine, entirely mine. I tried to make sense of it in my head, but there were no easy explanations, no shortcuts, no clever arguments to rewrite reality. I had underestimated her in ways I didn't even realize I could underestimate someone. I had thought my small schemes were clever. I had thought my control was absolute. I had thought she would react like everyone else, the way I wanted her to, and I had been completely wrong. And yet, even through the pain, even through the humiliation, I felt something else, a strange, unexpected respect. I started to see the subtle ways she had maneuvered, quietly, deliberately, without needing to raise her voice or force me to stumble. Each small act, the calm glance, the measured response, the precise timing, had been intentional. Not revenge, not malice, not arrogance, just intelligence, just foresight, just patience. I replayed the night in my head over and over, noticing things I hadn't before. The way she allowed me to corner her, only to redirect me so effortlessly. The way she used my own words and actions against me, not through aggression, but through subtlety and poise. The way she remained composed while I flailed, showing me the fragility of my ego without ever needing to say a word. Every detail I had dismissed now stood out like neon signs, and I couldn't ignore them. I realized she didn't need me to humiliate her. She didn't need me to make a scene or feel superior. She had outsmarted me entirely, and she had done it with quiet precision. The weight of that realization hit me harder than any public embarrassment had. The lesson wasn't about her. It was about me. About arrogance. About underestimating people. About thinking cleverness is something you can wield like a weapon without consequence. As I reflected, a strange clarity emerged. The embarrassment faded slightly, replaced by insight. She had orchestrated the events, yes, but not to destroy me, not to seek revenge. The hints were subtle, almost imperceptible. The timing of her responses, the careful way she let me play out my plan, the way she ensured I could see my own mistakes clearly. It was a lesson in its purest form, a lesson in humility, in awareness, in understanding that ego is fragile and patience is powerful. Karma, not cruelty. I thought about every word I'd said, every move I had made, every sneer I had flashed in my imagined superiority, and I saw them all as threads leading me to this reckoning. The sting of shame softened into something heavier, something more useful, a recognition that I had been given a chance to see my own flaws, a chance to understand the consequences of arrogance, a chance to grow. The quiet acts of hers that had once felt like small, indifferent gestures now carried immense weight. The way she had allowed me to think I controlled the situation. The way she had guided my arrogance into a trap I couldn't even anticipate. The way she had shown patience instead of anger. It was beautiful in a quiet, devastating way. I felt gratitude that I could recognize it, even while I still flinched from the memory of my own foolishness. And through all of this, the most humbling realization emerged. I had thought the night was about her. It wasn't. It was about me, about the way I had carried myself, the assumptions I had made, the arrogance I had nurtured like a shield against reality. The lesson wasn't delivered with force. It was delivered with intelligence, with care, with the precision of someone who understood the power of subtlety over spectacle. By the time I left that room, I wasn't the same person who had walked in, smug with confidence and cheap schemes. The pride, the illusion of control, the thrill of superiority, they were gone, replaced by humility, awareness, and a deep, quiet respect for the intelligence I had ignored. I knew I would carry this reckoning with me, a constant reminder that cleverness is hollow without understanding, that control is fragile when ego blinds you, and that the people you underestimate are often the ones teaching you the hardest lessons. I thought about her one last time before leaving, noticing the faint, almost imperceptible smile she gave. Not mocking, not triumphant, just aware. That awareness cut deeper than any insult could. It reminded me that strength doesn't need to shout, that wisdom doesn't need to force you to bow, and that sometimes the most powerful lessons come quietly, leaving you humbled, shaken, and finally awake to the person you thought you were. I walked away with the weight of it pressing against me. The weight of humility, of regret, of revelation. The game was over, but the lesson would last forever. I spent the next few hours alone, replaying everything in my head, and finally letting the truth settle. There's a moment when you can't hide from yourself anymore, when the layers of ego, arrogance, and pride peel away no matter how hard you try to cling to them. That night, I faced it. Every assumption I had made, every cheap attempt at control, every thought that I could manipulate someone with $20 in a plan, all of it lay bare. I realized I had been carrying a false sense of power, and it had cost me. Not just the situation, not just the humiliation, but the understanding of reality itself. She had moved through the night with precision, patience, and intelligence I hadn't even considered. And in seeing that, I understood how completely I had misjudged her, and misjudged human strength, subtlety, and resolve. I had thought confidence and control were loud, visible, almost aggressive traits. I had thought cleverness was about manipulation, about domination, about forcing the world to bend to your will. But I had been blind. She had shown me that power doesn't need to shout, that strength doesn't need to push, that patience can break arrogance faster than any confrontation. I remembered the small things, the way she let me think I was in charge, the way she redirected every attempt at humiliation, the way she never raised her voice but still made me feel exposed, entirely unprepared for the subtlety of her mind. I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't diminish it. And in that recognition, a new feeling began to form. Respect. Not the grudging kind, not the superficial nod of acknowledgement. A deep, quiet respect for someone who had outmaneuvered me without cruelty, without malice, and without needing to make a scene. She had simply been herself, fully aware, fully capable, fully unshaken. And I had underestimated her at my own peril. I knew I had to confront it, not her, not with excuses, not with the ego-driven attempt to regain ground. I had to confront myself. I thought about reaching out, not to reclaim pride, not to rewrite history, but to acknowledge my mistakes. To say what I had avoided saying in the heat of arrogance. That I had misjudged her, that I had let my ego blind me, that I had been foolish. I wanted her to see that I had learned. Not because I wanted forgiveness, not because I wanted to reclaim dignity, but because recognition was the only way to internalize the lesson fully. When I finally saw her, I didn't try to charm her, didn't try to smooth over the night. I simply met her gaze and spoke plainly, without flair, without performance. I admitted the arrogance, admitted the underestimation, admitted my failure to see her as she truly was. I could see in her eyes that she had already known, had already anticipated, had already moved with quiet clarity. And yet, there was no gloating, only awareness, only patience, only a reflection of what I had missed. And in that, I understood something fundamental. Humility isn't given, it's earned. Through recognition, through reflection, through facing the weight of your own misjudgment. I thought about my friend, about the hotel room, about every small action that had built toward my collapse, and I realized it wasn't just about me being humiliated. It was about being awakened. The night had stripped me bare of false cleverness, false confidence, false notions of control. It had exposed the weakness that comes from underestimating people. It had taught me that patience, intelligence, and quiet awareness can be more powerful than any scheme or plan I could ever devise. And it had left me with a choice, to walk away unchanged or to internalize it and grow. I chose growth. As I left the hotel, the air felt different, almost lighter. Not because the humiliation was gone, but because the lesson had taken its place. I walked slowly, deliberately, letting the weight of the night press against me, without letting it break me. Every step was a reminder. Arrogance blinds you. Ego deceives you. Cheap tricks don't create power. Real understanding comes from humility, observation, and the courage to admit your mistakes. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The night, the lesson, the reckoning, it was all behind me now, ingrained in my mind and chest. I carried it quietly, like a scar that reminds you where you once bled, but also shows you that you survived. That you can survive, and that surviving requires more than cleverness. It requires awareness, respect, and restraint. And somewhere deep down, I knew that if I was ever tempted to let ego dictate my actions again, this night would be the anchor. The memory of how quickly arrogance crumbles under quiet intelligence. The memory of how carefully patience can dismantle the illusions we hold about ourselves. The memory of her eyes, calm and unshaken, reflecting all that I had refused to see. I walked out of the hotel humbled, wiser, and quietly determined. Not to reclaim anything, not to assert anything, but to handle my own arrogance differently. To notice more, to underestimate less, to respect the subtle strength in others without needing it to challenge me. To understand that true growth often comes from moments where you feel powerless, embarrassed, and unprepared. I didn't smile. I didn't boast. I didn't make plans to correct the world. I simply walked, carrying the lesson like a quiet weight, letting it sink into me fully, knowing that the real awakening isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It's still. It's patient. It's deliberate. And for the first time that night, I felt ready. Ready to carry this understanding forward. Ready to live it. Ready to be better. Not cleverer, not louder, not manipulative, but wiser, humbler, and aware. The night had ended. My ego had failed. My arrogance had collapsed. But I had awakened. And that was enough.